The Company Men is a 2010 movie written and directed by John Wells. And John Wells directed many of the shows from The West Wing, from ER, old TV shows, and he even writes and directs some of the Showtime TV show called Shameless. For me, one of the main themes of this movie is the dignity of work and how do we define ourselves by our jobs. I think the main character is Ben Affleck, who plays Bobby Walker. And Bobby defines the good life by having things. He's very acquisitive. He loves his Pats tickets. He loves his Porsche. He loves his country club membership. He lives in a very expensive house. By my calculation, he's probably making about $160,000 a year with bonus and salary and everything else, which is really good money, but never enough. It's never enough for him until he's downsized, until he's let go. And in his brashness, he thinks, well, I'll only need a couple of days to get my, get back on my feet and take my old clients, do all these different things. And he really sees how difficult it is for a 37-year-old person with an MBA, like many other 37-year-old people with their MBAs, have a difficult time out there when they lose their job, they lose their definition, they lose their self-worth. Now, Aristotle defines the good life in a different way. It's more along the lines of happiness and thinking about family, thinking about neighbors, thinking about community. And we see that to an extent with Ben Affleck's wife, played by her name in the TV show or the movies called Maggie. It's played by Rosemary DeWitt, wonderful actress. And Ben Affleck is bemoaning about how he's a 37-year-old jerk, like every other 37-year-old jerk that can't get a job, and is a loser and really down on himself. And Rosemary DeWitt, his wife Maggie, basically says, grabs him effectively and says, you have our children, you have your parents, you have your health, you have me, you have me. And I really think that's more along the lines of what Aristotle's talking about, redefining how do we say what is the most important things in our life. Porsches can go, memberships can go, but family, community, health, relationship, that's really where happiness is. Now, it's an interesting company. GTX was founded by the Salinger character, played by Craig T. Nelson, and his best friend, played by Tommy Lee Jones. That's the Gene McCarty character. And it's their really interesting relationship between the two of them. We see that Craig T. Nelson is this consummate capitalist, and he's thinking about how to provide for the shareholders, but he's really concerned mostly about how does he provide for himself as the shareholders. How does he get the stock price up? How does he prevent being taken over by a corporate raider? And he'll do whatever he has to do that. Well, not exactly. He chose not to sell the new building. He chose not to sell the healthcare division. He chose not to sell the Degas. What his choice was to basically sell the employees, to do another cut and another cut and another cut, because we'd cut expenses and the stock price would go up. The character of Gene McCarty, played by Tommy Lee Jones, is more of the moral conscience of the company. He's concerned about what impact this will have on really good employees who've been loyal. And this whole concept of loyalty is really kind of portrayed in this movie. It's no longer what have you done for me or what's your longevity been, but it's what have you done for me lately. And if you're not really providing, then I'm going to have to basically have a new contract, and that new contract doesn't include you. So for me, it's a very interesting movie, and I also like the character of Phil Woodward. Phil Woodward, played by Chris Cooper, goes from this rags to riches, back to rags again character who worked his way off the stockroom or the shipbuilding floor to a senior executive position, is then let go, and doesn't know what to do with himself. In fact, his wife tells him he can't go home until after 6 o'clock so the neighbors won't know that he was fired. And there's a really poignant scene in the movie where he's throwing rocks at the GTX corporate headquarters and saying, how could this happen? How could this happen to me? My life's ruined, but everybody I see around me, my neighbors, they're doing fine. How come when my life, this was happening to me, nothing seemed to be happening to them? And he's just having a really difficult time processing that. The interesting character arc about Ben Affleck is when he basically, goes from this hot shot to a person begging his brother-in-law, played by Kevin Costner, to put up drywall in a project just to keep the family going. And it's interesting because when he's done that, it's freed up more time for him to be with his family. He helps build a treehouse for his children. He is playing basketball with his son. He's not on the road all the time. And when he's given the opportunity to go to a similar job that Gene McCarthy, the Tommy Lee Jones character, offers, he has to think about it. Should I go back to that kind of lifestyle as opposed to a simpler life? And he's quickly corrected by Kevin Costner. You better take that job if you're making $80,000 a year, because you are a rotten carpenter. And we kind of see how he redefines himself. But I think he might be a little bit more centered. I think he might be a little bit more interested in balance, not just focused on acquiring things, but surviving, doing well by himself and also by his family and by his company. So for me, The Company Men is a very interesting way of starting the course. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to your comments on the discussion board.